Hi, Andy. Thanks for joining the show today. Can you tell us a little bit about your history and background in design?
So I started out in design 20 years ago at a time when we were doing UX, but it wasn't even called UX. It was
Right.
really just design. And these specializations didn't exist. So I got involved in digital really early, ended up, going through a few different jobs. I started a small agency with some friends, and our first client was BlackBerry, and we launched
There
like
you go.
all of these interesting IT tools in Latin America for them. And after that agency, we kept it for a few years, but ultimately, like, it was time to go off on our own. I ended up at Office Depot, which at the time was the sixth largest e-commerce company in the world. And I got to be involved in mobile at a time when mobile was really becoming a thing. PayPal integration, working with Apple on Passbook, like everything that mobile does now was all kind of built around that same time.
Yeah.
Uh, I stayed in e-commerce for a little bit and then found this amazing opportunity for a complex problem in healthcare. Moved to Minnesota, worked for 3M, like starting on medical devices and the interfaces, but eventually like building a team focused on enterprise healthcare for software, like complex problems in the healthcare industry, like quality of care, efficiency of billing, like how do we audit different charts, like just amazing things and understanding collaboration between medical professionals. I left 3M and went and built a global team for a power sports company, Indian motorcycle, snowmobiles, like off-road vehicles. It was like fun things, but it was a little bit of a break from the complexity, but I missed that. So I went into finance and I went to a bank and became the head of user experience design for a bank that ended up merging to become the sixth largest bank in the US
Wow.
and standing up new practices through a merger like enterprise design, design advocacy and community management, strategic design and innovation. Like all of that really prepared me for the role I have today as the VP of product design and content for Quicken Loans, the nation's number one like mortgage lender. And being able to build and mature a team and a design organization for how do we anticipate the needs of our clients and how do we innovate and how do we like deliver amazing experiences in such a an important area in somebody's life. So those are the things for me. I've been through a few different kind of industries, and
Yeah.
I've learned that like I love complexity because I fall in love with the problem space. I never fall in love with the solution. It's always the problem, and that's really like driven me and inspired me through my career.
So, Andy, you're also a professor. Can you tell us a little bit about that? What's changed in teaching design? I know the whole educational experience is changing rapidly, especially in design, but what's your approach to teaching and how is that going to change?
Primarily I teach because it's my way of giving back to the design community. That's been really good to me throughout the years. And when you get to a certain level in your career, you want to like support the next generation of designers. So
Absolutely.
for me, I teach online right now in a master's program at Kent State University, their UX program, and it's fully remote. It's always been since I've been
Oh, nice.
teaching there. I just like having that experience to kind of like shape minds that aren't fully, I don't want to say fully developed, but they're learning this new like capability and seeing where they can take it and making sure they get that foundational knowledge. Because I had taught earlier on in my career, and it was a different type of program. It was more about understanding the tools and how you
Yeah.
can apply them to solve problems, where now I think our industry has shifted into like how do we think of solving problems and then apply design principles to leverage tools to create outcomes, right? The tool at one point was one of the primary focuses. I think we shifted from like theory to tool to now we're back to like theory and understanding the problem space. So, there's different types of learning that pop up. There are online learning, there's in-person learning, there are boot camps, right?
Mhm.
And all of them have their pros and cons. At the end of the day, it's really about inspiring that next generation of designers and then helping them find those roles that they can grow and learn. And I think today we're starting to see people, we expect you to have a few years of experience. Like, let's take the time to take the people that just graduated and help them grow, help them learn.
What piece of advice would you have for junior designers entering the field today?
Well, you mentioned junior designers, and I feel like there's a more powerful term, right? To me, they are emerging designers. The reason I call them emerging designers is because they come to us with this fresh perspective, this like blue sky thinking of what design can be and how we can leverage design for good. They haven't been jaded or like beaten up by the industry and following process. So I think they're like at the beginning point of this like rocket launch for their career. And to me, the advice is just stay curious. That curiosity that you have is inspiring to the rest of the team. Like just that perspective of seeing things through like fresh eyes is
Yeah,
just so valuable. And the passion that they have is so like it's awesome. It's contagious.
I love that. In your 20-year career, you've seen UX roles emerge, disappear. What new roles do you think are needed in this new decade of UX?
So it's great that you asked because there are a few like key roles that are starting to pop up that I think are so important to have on teams. The first one would be, we could call it a futurist, we could call it strategic foresight, but it's someone that's really painting that picture of scenarios that could happen 5, 10, 15 years out. And the thing is, that's a moving target. We may never hit it, but it makes us think about problems in our problem space in different ways. Like, who would have guessed that we ever had a pandemic? But I'm sure like every futurist now is like, imagine there's a pandemic. How would your business change? How would your design change? So things like that, that sense of like where we could go is really important. I think you're seeing a lot more service designers now. I think that's important for us to understand our ecosystem and the different touch points and understanding like the gaps between the touch points, because those provide the opportunities of like new areas of focus. The other thing, much related to the book that I'm writing,
Yeah.
is design ethicists, right? The people that really think about what could potentially go wrong. Are we doing the right thing? Does our design solve that problem in a way that won't be used against us or in a way we didn't intend to? And like those to me are three of the top roles that you're going to be seeing more and more.
Andy, you have a book coming out. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what's the motivation behind the book?
The book is called Designing for Safety. Co-authoring it with Lisa Welchman, who wrote Managing Chaos. So Lisa and I met at a conference last year, World Usability Day in Cleveland. We had a mutual friend, Kevin Hoffman, introduce us. We all went out to dinner, and just our topics for the conference and our ideas just kind of like, we thought we were a perfect match to write this book. So it's called Designing for Safety, and it's coming out in Q1, Q2 next year. And it really is about how we embed safety, or the thought of safety, which we kind of define as products that are designed to minimize emotional, economic, physical, and psychological harm to any human being and to society. And how do we start to like think about that through the product development process, and how we can make sure that what we're designing isn't causing harm to people in any way. So, in the book, when we talk about safety, it's talking about lots of different things, right? It's not just harm to products. It really is like this idea of bias and cultural blindness and the way we use technologies in ways that we don't, especially like we didn't intend to. It's about understanding, how we're pervasive, how we can listen to people through like social methods or devices in your house. It's just things that we don't necessarily think about when we're first figuring out what our solution could potentially be. It's trust, it's privacy, it's security, it's ethics. It's so many things that make up whether someone feels safe with a product or not. And when we think about the best solutions that we can provide, it's how we bring diverse voices to the table, diverse perspectives,
Yeah.
because that's what creates things not being safe, essentially. It's when you build something in a bubble with the same people that have the same experiences as you, it doesn't allow you to think like, what if, or how this impacts this person, or how
Yeah.
like someone else's experience make them feel about a particular product.
I hear diversity come up a lot. What is the practical way to make sure that we're designing for everyone?
Yeah, I mean, there's two things, right? It's first, look around you and see who's not there, and
Yeah.
make sure that they're represented as you're going through the design process. But it's also about involving customers, and customers of all demographics.
Yeah.
Anyone that could potentially use your product, you need to have them involved in testing that. You need to make sure that it works for them. It matches their experience, their mental model. It solves the problem that they have. So it really is just like pay attention to what's missing and make sure that it's not.
Andy, thanks so much for being on the show today. We really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's been a blast.